Hey everyone, God bless you. Thanks a lot for tuning in. My reflection today I've entitled, Motherhood is Not a Pathology. Truly one of the unique qualities that bears witness to the lack of reason of our age is the fact that motherhood has been abandoned wholesale by such a large percentage of women. And the quest also has been collaborated in with many men's consent to completely abandon what has in all traditional societies been the cherished position of mother. And I don't mean that this has taken place in some sort of small or minuscule fashion. No, this has been a tsunami of rejection, a massive reversal in valuation from cultures esteeming the role of the mother as the guardian of the heart of the family, as absolutely core to civilization, to now motherhood being demonized and despised and literally treated as a pathology. One of the most popular posts on TikTok in this last year was a post, I think it was called The List. And it simply had millions and millions of viewers, over 800,000 likes. And it was a listing of hundreds of reasons not to have a child, not to bear another human being. Can you imagine the insanity, the insanity? Some of you might have seen recently, I think it was in yesterday's news, the president of North Korea was giving a speech to Korean moms, and he was crying. He was literally dabbing his eyes as he was giving this speech. This is President Kim Jong-un, because the birth rate in North Korea had reached such a low pitch. He was basically begging the women of his country to have children for the good of the state. Now, some of you may respond and say, well, it's understandable since North Korea is impoverished and mothers don't want to bring up their children in that. In fact, they do have a very low birth rate in North Korea, way below replacement, which is at 2.1 children to just replace your population. They're way down, I think, at 1.26, 1.3, something like that. Well, if the problem is prosperity and a lack of prosperity, then why is it that South Korea, same geography, but much more prosperous, a free country that is engaged in world trade and is very rich compared to North Korea, has an even lower birth rate, a birth rate of 0.78. Now, to understand how catastrophic that is, imagine you have 200 people today. In one generation, those 200 will become 78 people. And then imagine repeating that if the birth rate remains the same. This is a more catastrophic population decline than the result of the Black Death in Europe in the 14th century. A disease that decimated Europe's population, did not decimate the population as much as voluntary contraception and abortion and the radical refusal to treat motherhood as anything but as a pathology, a disease to be avoided. Oh, the dying West, the dying West. And it's not just Asia. Of course, Asia is in very bad shape. Japan also is in very bad shape. I think around 1.3 is their birth rate. Many scholars say that once a culture dips below 1.5, they'll never recover. It's impossible to recover. These are cultures that are in the process of death, that will not exist in the future. How grievous. And this isn't just an Asian problem, of course. All the Western European nations are below replacement value. The United States held out for a long time, but now we have a significant period of time in which we ourselves are significantly below just maintaining our population through birth. We're at something like 1.7 now. Catastrophic. What is going on? How could motherhood experience such a reversal? How is it that it could go from cherished to considered to be a disease and have popular videos made of the hundreds of reasons never to have a child? People have lost their vision and their sanity. What's at the core of this is an eclipse of the love of God. This is what happens when you lose God from your mind and heart. And a loss of the appreciation of the human being as made in the image of God. These are the natural fruits of the very grotesque worldview change that has gone on in the last 50 plus years in the global propagation of secularism. Truly grievous. We've fallen out of love with God, and therefore we have fallen out of love with his image, and we have no longer a great appreciation for human beings at all. It's a great sadness. It's a great sadness for all involved, mothers and fathers, but particularly women who have become the playthings of men and accepted as their presupposition for significance a public, male, and external life, no longer centered upon children and the home. What's the result? Well, the result is what we are seeing today, the death of the human race. Pregnancy in the mind of the church, in the Christian evaluation, is not an inconvenience. It's a precious gift from God. It's not an attack on our ability to be personally fulfilled. It's a means towards fulfillment. It's not something to be grieved, but something to be celebrated. It's, in the words of the psalmist, in Psalm 126 and 127, those marvelous wedding psalms, marriage psalms, the fruit of the womb is a reward. Children are a blessing from the Lord and a gift from him. Motherhood is glorious. The greatest human being after our Lord Christ is his most pure mother, whose greatest contribution to the human race, to the salvation of the world, was to raise her son, the God-man Christ. This is what we think of motherhood. This is the Christian mind about motherhood. St. Nectarios of Aegina, who fell asleep in the Lord in 1920 and who has won the world with his love, has a beautiful reflection that he wrote while he was the head of the Rosarios Theological Academy in Greece. He wrote this reflection. It's entitled Motherhood and the Raising of Children, in which he describes the essential quality of a mother and how precious and important she is in the formation of love in her children's life. And this, dear ones, is what's lacking in the conversation today. If your goal in life is to acquire love, then mothers are absolutely front and central. If your goal in life is to acquire things and to live a crass external life and then die and go out of existence, so you think, then of course we can despise motherhood. But if you care about love as the greatest acquisition in the world, mothers are front and center. Listen to this beautiful word from St. Nectarios. He says, nature has appointed parents, especially mothers, to be the teachers of this age, and these latter are therefore necessary to our lofty work as pedagogues to suitably educate and carefully form children. It is they who serve as images and patterns of which their children become copies in continuation. A child imitates either the virtues or the shortcomings of his mother, her voice and manner, her ethos and behavior, to such an extent that one might very rightly compare him to the recording cylinder of a phonograph, which first receives the waves of a voice and then plays it back in the same tone and timbre with which it was originally expressed. The mother's every breath, every word, every movement and action become the breath, word, expression, movement, and action of the child. Asterios thus says, "For one of the children preserves the tones of his mother's voice, another possesses most of her features, another is like her in disposition." The mother, though through consistent interaction with her child and the constant prompting offered by these occasions, creates an impression on the soul of the child, influences its ethos, and gives it an initial push towards the good. With a look, a kiss, a soothing voice, and sweet words, a mother is able to rouse an inclination toward the good in a child's heart. Similarly, with a look of displeasure, a tear falling down her cheek, by some expression showing the sorrow of her heart, she is able to pull the child away from heart-destroying danger. A child raised in the mother's bosom and warmed in the mother's embrace begins to love before it has ever learned what love means. It begins to subject its will to the moral law before it has learned what moral law means. It is the mother who most properly plants the first idea of God in the child's heart. Motherhood, we bow before it. We esteem it as the highest of all human endeavors and as absolutely bedrock foundational to the prosperity of the human race, to the advancement of the church. Marriage, dear ones, and family life are great treasures from the Lord. Reject this degrading secular view of life that has no respect for human beings and has fallen out of love with God and with his image. Reject it. Be done with it. Instead, embrace the path. Embrace the path of service to God. And if your calling is to marriage and not to monastic life, then trod that road of marriage and parenting as a road towards salvation, as a path to meaning and significance beyond anything that you could have dreamed. See that this is the womb for the fashioning of that which is most important in this life, which is the acquisition and development of love for God and for other people. Mothers are absolutely key and central. The only thing to fear is loving yourself. Fear that. Crush that. Banish that. And joy will be your possession forevermore. Marriage and motherhood, these are not pathologies. These are mysteries. God be with you.
Patristic Nectar Publications is pleased to announce the launch of PNP Kids, our new YouTube channel for children's content. Please join us for story time with Presbytera Catherine as she reads Orthodox children's literature. We invite you also to join Father Jason each week for the Sunday Gospel and children's homilies. And tune in to Cloud of Witnesses, where a full cast of performers reenact the lives of the saints. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Patristic Nectar Kids, or find us via the PNP Kids podcast on your favorite podcast streaming platform. And please consider making a donation to Patristic Nectar Publications so that we may continue to offer more free content.